You start getting addicted to the feeling of when you get somebody to the point where you start making them money and then you really substantially impact their business, there's no better feeling than that.
Right.
Admittedly, I'm not going to sit here like other marketers claim they're AI experts at this point. It's all BS. It's moving too fast, but we're still smart enough people to move with it. It's just constantly chasing at this point. I can't express enough that you don't have to force yourself into a box. Like, there's ways you can be influencing people everywhere. It's just got to find what the way speaks to you. And then but
Right.
then you got to commit to it. Like, no matter what.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the Franchise Guide.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, the show where we help corporate executives experience time and financial freedom. Thanks for joining us today. We have a very special guest. We have Lonnie Jones from Local SEO Help. Lonnie, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We've been talking a lot. I'm like, man, we should have recorded the previous call, but about 20 minutes ago as well. There's every time we speak, I learn something new. But I wanted to bring you on. We talk about business ownership, and we've been bringing guests. We've had franchisors on the show talking about different franchise models. We've had accountants and attorneys. And one area we haven't talked a lot about was marketing. And we had a conversation a while back about SEO. And I said, you know what? Let me bring Lonnie on. Let's get a show. We can talk about SEO, maybe the future of marketing. I have a lot of questions on my list that I still haven't asked. And I'm like, why not create a show? But before we dive in, if you can give the audience a little bit of background on who Lonnie is and how did you get into marketing SEO?
I mean, I don't really consider myself a marketer. I'm a numbers guy. I have a degree in finance. I started my career as an accountant and started a little accounting firm that I ended up selling, and then was way more interested in the internet. I mean, I'm old, so the internet was a new thing at some point in my life where now it's just part of life for most kids these days. And I wanted to pursue the internet because it was an interesting new thing. And that's where I said, let me start a website, right? I'm just some guy that wanted to start a website and started a business online. And part of that process, I picked up a book about SEO one day because frankly, I was a business owner, entrepreneur, a lot like people that are probably going to listen to this podcast. So I don't consider myself a marketer. I learned SEO for my own business, and so a lot of your questions were about SEO. And you know why? Because you want to help your business. Luckily now there's a whole industry of SEO that you can turn to, good, bad, or otherwise, depending on who you work with. But I had the same mindset. The difference was there's no one for me to turn to. There's like maybe 10 people in the world that even add that title to their name. And so I was just on my own. So I started doing it and did very well. I mean, transparently, this was before it was as complicated as it was now, and you can get away with a little bit more. But hey, that's what started me down my path. Ended up selling that business and asking myself, what do I want to do with my life? And in the process of thinking about what I want to do next with my life, a bunch of people in my industry approached me and said, Lonnie, can you help us with SEO? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm a business owner. I'm going to start another business, and
Right.
come on, help me. And I said, all right, they're good friends of mine. I said, okay, I'll do it for a few months. We'll just see what happens. I never even thought it would turn into a thing, but I just got success after success. Maybe it was luck. I don't know back then. I look back and think about all the stuff I did. I like to think I know things, but I didn't know anything then. And that's how it started. Just started having success. And you start getting addicted to the feeling of when you get somebody to the point where you start making them money and then you really substantially impact their business, there's no better feeling than that,
Right.
And so that's kind of where it just led into one day I blinked and I was like, I guess I'm an agency.
Right.
No, I
Right.
never considered it that way. And then I started getting franchise stuff come my way and, this is where we're talking today. So
Awesome.
that's a little bit about myself and how I got here.
Sometimes you just fall into stuff, right? It's not the grand plan, and you just, hey, get the interest is there. You start to build some traction in a certain area. So it's kind of been hearing that more and more often. So that's kind of you never know what's going to fall in your lap. All right, I want to maybe from an educational standpoint take a step back. Now, when you look at marketing, we'll use the word marketing in general. There's multiple pillars, right? I look at it, there's maybe some of these are kind of subcategories or subpillars, but SEO to me is one of the most important. Search engine optimization for anyone listening in, because I didn't know what the heck SEO stood for when I first heard SEO. But that to me is more of the organic pillar. It's, what you're doing on the website, link building. There's a lot of aspects to that. What are the other pillars? Because some people, may only double down and do SEO, but ignore the rest. So what would you say are, not to spend a lot of time, but what are the pillars in marketing, if you wouldn't mind sharing?
I think the problem with calling it a pillar is it silos all these different channels, pillars, whatever you want to say. I think if you think about before the internet happened, how do people see you as a business? They would see a billboard you're driving by.
Right.
You'd see a truck out in the field. You'd hear your neighbors discussing you or talking about you, referring you. You'd watch TV. I mean, back in the day when people actually watched commercials, you'd hear it on the radio, and so you really want to be seen as in a variety of places as possible,
Right.
primarily the places where your customers are going to be more densely, engaging. And so when you translate that into the internet, it's just the same thing. They're just new versions of that, additional versions of that, because a lot of those still exist. And, this is where somebody, I spend 1 minute and I'm in my day at work and I'm do a lot of Google searches because I'm doing research on things or looking potential clients up or existing clients up or competitor research or things like that. And I'm on Google a lot. And so then I want to make sure when I actually go to look for a service or product, I know I go to Google. It's just the way I am. And a lot of other people do that. So that's where you want to have a presence for people who are at a certain stage of their buying cycle or thought process where they're going to find you. Whereas when I get off of work, I go and I finally want to decompress and I sit down on my porch or in a chair or something. And guess where I go? I go to LinkedIn. I go to Facebook. I just start checking things out. Instagram for some people, TikTok these days, right? And so that's where, but I'm still the same person that will be influenced by the brands that I potentially are a good fit for.
By the way, yeah, I like that point. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So I didn't answer your question, but there's social, which is organic and paid. Organic is where you just see businesses share content and things like that. And then paid is where they do an advertisement. There's Google search. Google has a Google display mechanism, which is similar to paid social. I don't know. There's lots of email coming in, SMS coming in. There's these things called voicemail drops where a voicemail just pops into your inbox, which is people blow their minds when they get that. They think they missed a call and that's the impression they give, but it's just a voicemail. But guess what? People listen to those because they're curious to who this is.
Right.
And that gives you a chance to get, somebody's in front of somebody that you may not otherwise. So anyway, I probably worked around that question, but essentially that's kind of how I perceive it.
I prefer the explanation. Actually, your explanation much better. That's how my mind works. Maybe that's how my mind's structured, but that makes complete sense. And to your point, yeah, I'm LinkedIn during the day, but in the evenings, I'm not on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, and that's one way I bond with the kids. The kids will be sending me, stupid videos, and it's like, who can find the stupider video? So we're sharing them back and forth. Actually, text message doesn't work. If it's not an Instagram message, then they're not even responding. So that's my way of being able to communicate with the two high school kids. So that's
wow.
That's a whole
that takes skill. Skill right there.
We'll do a show on that. That'll be a next week's show. But
you might need a couch for that one, though. Yeah. That's a different conversation.
Couch, and I'll bring the kids in. It'll be a party. SEO is, as you mentioned, it's more organic. There's a lot of components to it, and maybe we come back to SEO. But my thing, and the questions that I have, and I'm sure the listeners have, is, the game has changed. Back in the day, you just did a blog post and that was more than enough because there was less people on, there was less technology, less ways, right? So now with AI and everything that's being able to be produced, I'm noticing I do a Google search. It's like you're getting AI responses on top, which I found interesting. So that, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that still technically SEO because the AI is pulling from somewhere? So if you can explain a little bit about what the future looks like. If you're doing traditional SEO, what is going to change in the future, and how do you make it to that, to where the AI is going to be picking up your stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years. I say 15 years because I haven't done the math to know exactly how many years. I probably should do that one day, but definitely over 15 years if I were to look back. And search engines have changed. When I first started this, there wasn't even Google. Wasn't even Google. There's Yahoo, there's AOL, which people may not even heard of. There's search engines have evolved over time. Now, Google ends up becoming the 800-pound gorilla literally overnight. And so that's where all everybody ever talks about. But then even beyond Google, YouTube's a search engine. YouTube was bought by Google. They didn't invent YouTube, and that was its own search engine. DuckDuckGo is a search engine, obviously Microsoft and now Bing. Over the years I've been doing this, search engines have came and went, and there's new search engines, even going to Instagram's a search engine. You're looking, usually when you're investigating and trying to find either a brand or somebody interesting you want to listen to, or even like a podcast, people go to the search engine of podcast, research franchise podcaster, right? Or franchise information, and they want to find the podcasters talking about franchise stuff because they have interest in that. So all these things are search engines and they follow a very similar pattern. Guess what? When AI comes into the picture, it's the same thing. It's just a way more advanced competitor that, good, bad, or otherwise, it just means that I need to put energy into figuring out what that new robot needs to see to, for my clients to then be seen and be found. And, for me, I've been seeing this coming for 3 years now. A lot of people are just being introduced to this like this year or so this isn't new to me. I've already been doing the research and it's rapidly changing. So I don't want to sit here and say that anybody's an expert, but once you understand the bones and the fundamentals of it, you just keep evolving from that and to account for that in the strategy that I take on for my clients. Now, it's affecting informational searches more than anything. When somebody's doing research, like I've been using it a lot. I don't know if I want to admit it or not, but I like adding context. If you can't tell, I can talk and talk and talk. When I search for something, I'd rather give a paragraph search with tons of context, and I want AI to give me the answers because I can get the same context back and then my answer. That's more valuable to me than having me to go dig for that information. And so right now we're seeing it mostly affect those types of searches. You never go to Google and write a paragraph, right? And the quality of results I'm getting is helpful. But if I'm looking for a roofing company, the franchisee level, at the local level, I mean, think about AI. They're full of information, but like, how does AI differentiate between 10 roofing companies? The information that's provided to them on the surface of a website is all equal in AI's mind. They're going to look for third-party information like reviews. Right. They want to see the sentiment of those reviews. They want to see other websites recommending them, forums, Reddit, things like that. So like they're evaluating it very similarly than how Google does, but probably a little more unique though. So I think if I were, a betting man, I'd say there's inconsistency in local results at this point. And that's what I have to navigate is I could be following the same strategy for 20 franchisees and I might have 20 different results where right now I have a very similar result. So that's where I have to overcome, but it's because it's just such a new place to go into. There's no clarity on consistency that I can follow. I need patterns to then create a strategy to consistently win. Right. And that's where it seems to be changing rapidly but the bones are there, still not quite seeing the patterns that I need to know exactly what to do. I mean, admittedly, I'm not going to sit here like other marketers claim they're AI experts at this point. It's all BS. It's moving too fast, but we're still smart enough people to move with it. It's just constantly chasing at this point. Gotcha. At least that's how I feel.
Yeah, it's an evolving thing, and I feel it's just you're constantly learning things. Once you figure it out, it's changing. But I guess if you learn anything, is just to evolve with it. It's not stagnant. It's not you're constantly having to improve. You're on page 1 day, this week, and that you may be at page 20 if you're not keeping up. So
that's why you have to love what you do, because then what I do, I love it. I love the challenge of learning. I've been doing it for 15 years for a reason. This isn't new. It's just a different version of what I experienced. And if you don't love this, if you're doing this as a job, you're not going to always be interested in this type of stuff to continue to learn. So I think that's maybe where I might have an advantage over other people is I can't help it. I need to constantly be in front of it, not even for the sake of my business, because I'm just generally curious, and I think that helps me a lot, loving chasing this type of stuff. Right. So I'm not mad about it. I'm actually happy that I like the involvement. If it's too stale, I get bored, or that means other people can get into my space and now I'm more competitors, because if it's easy, everybody will do it, right? Exactly.
And they'll do it themselves, right? As if it was easy. There's so many elements as a solopreneur that it's hard to keep on top of things. 2 parts. Number 1, you have an SEO masterclass that you had shared with me. If you can talk about that and who that's for. And then the second part would be if you are working with that startup franchisee or even the solopreneur, just say they're not even a franchisee and they have only we'll say 5 hours a week to really spend time on SEO, where should they start and what would be your top recommendations?
Well, yeah, those are good questions. I mean, I created the franchise SEO Masterclass that's being hosted on franchisors.com. If anybody wants to go check it out, it's free. The reason why I created that is because I've talked to hundreds of franchise brands over the years of doing this, thousands of franchisees, and I get the same questions over and over again. Okay. So I put those questions in a video like this and I put them into a list where you or your marketing teams can go get questions answered without having to like book a call with me and ask me the question. People are sometimes uncomfortable just getting one answer. They think I'm going to try to sell them something. I'm not that way, but I made it easy for them and put them out there and said, hey, go get your answers. And the second reason why is because these franchise brands, I'll inherit them. I'll sign them as a client and there's so many mistakes. And I go, I know where those mistakes come from. They're either coming from their lack of education or their agency's lack of education. And, they mean, but they don't know what they don't know. They don't know the intricacies of and the depth of what SEO can be and all the lessons learned from that depth. So then I have to fix it. And then a lot of times I have to fix it. That takes resources and time and money. It also slows down the results that I could get somebody if they didn't make those mistakes. So I'm hoping brands and their marketing teams will go and get questions answered. And at the very least, use it to challenge their existing agencies or their existing marketing teams and get them to at least address it before they take a step in a different direction, or maybe learn something and go, hey, let's do what Lonnie says on here. And then, maybe one day if I end up working with them, it'll make my life easier. And ultimately that brand's going to have a better experience and get a better result. And that's ultimately what matters to me.
And the site was again?
It's on franchisors.com.
Franchisors.
And they hosted it. I'm starting to do, probably do some videos and stuff on YouTube at some point, just not quite developed there yet. But right now, franchisors.com is hosting it for me. So happy that they did that. And, it's a resource for everybody. It's free. I can give you the link and you can add it to this description or wherever you want to put it. People can get to it easily. But then, the second question you asked was about if somebody has limited time, let's say they have 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week or 5 hours a month to put into SEO. I mean, it's a good question. A couple things. One, you got to have content out there. I know that's something that you hear over and over again. You're doing it right now. You're creating content. You're having me on here and you're talking about things that are related to the industry you're in and the direction the businesses you're pursuing would get value out of the conversations like this. So doing something like this is well worth your time and energy. It's just, what's your version of this at whatever business is watching this, right? I mean,
right.
I'm not a comfortable person interviewing people. I won't ever do a podcast. I can talk, you can tell that. I can answer questions. I mean, I guess that's easy. When you know stuff, you just answer things top of your head. So it's not like a challenge, but I wouldn't be good at interviewing people. So it's not a good fit for me. So you got to find what's a good fit for you, what channel that's on. You obviously want to be in the channels that your customers will be or whatever, but there's some influence there. But ultimately find what you're comfortable with and just start with what's easy for you. Don't force yourself into generating content or doing things that you're not comfortable with. I'm not good on social media. Like, I'll sit here and answer these questions, but then now I LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, and I need to post selfies. And I was at a conference yesterday. I didn't even take one picture. It's stupid. I'm a marketing guy. I didn't take one picture. And so now I'm like, I probably should have taken some pictures and put them on LinkedIn, but it's not my instincts. But
Gotta go steal them. Gotta go steal them from others.
Doing the masterclass, correct. Doing a masterclass was my thing I could lean into, and now I have this huge asset that hopefully will lead me and get me in front of people that I wouldn't get in front of. So content is oversold in the sense of everybody says get content, but what does find what works for you and just start there and just stay focused on that and build it out. And then you can figure out, once you have that, like, how do you get people in front of that? That's what I recommend. I guess if I was a franchisee, the other element, and you asked a question about AI already, is AI is actually evaluating a franchisee or a local business or, solopreneur that has their own local business. It's not as much about what like Lonnie can do on a website. It's about the whole picture is actually becoming crystallized in AI's mind. They can see the big picture, where Google has tried many years to see the big picture, but they still compartmentalize all the elements of what a real business does. It's not just the content on the website. It's how many reviews they have. It's I already said it earlier, the sentiment in forums, the sentiment in social, things like that, and they're evaluating all that together and deciding who should be number one. AI is going to do something similar, but I think they're going to be better at the other things that aren't on a website, that aren't in a Google business profile. The things that I know how to manipulate the best are still going to have value, but I think there's going to be more value in AI being able to evaluate a real business that's highly sought after in a market. And that's where you, as the business owner, needs to be out there and doing all those glue things that it's hard for an agency to do. And that's collaborating with other local businesses, joining Chamber of Commerce. I know this sounds like stuff you've already heard before, but this is the stuff that then ends up online and ends up in different areas and referrals, and you build brand ambassadors at the local level. All those types of things generate activity and conversations and things that AI is now going to see at a better depth. And that's going to be influencing how much you show up in the AI search engine or the AI version of the search engine.
Gotcha.
Those are the types of things. So just do real business, real local marketing. I know it sounds like it seems like a cop out answer, but I'm telling you, I always see franchise brands say, I want my franchisees to be the mayor of town. I hear that everywhere. It's true. And this is even doubling down on that, because you need to be out there creating relationships, creating, with the intent potentially to create referrals,
Yes.
things like that. That is going to drive activity that is going to be picked up by AI. And that's going to get influencing SEO, which is this, people aren't going to really put this together, but that's ultimately what I'd recommend with my time is don't make a to-do list of things you're going to do for SEO and I'm going to optimize this or whatever. Either generate content, or if you're in a local market, you can still generate content, but lean into fostering relationships locally, because that will circle back around and generate the activity online that these AI search engines are going to be seeing and using to influence where you show up.
Right.
There's a long answer. Like
No,
always from
and
me,
it's good. I mean, a big part of it, as you mentioned, the stuff that you enjoy doing, like you said, you're not necessarily a podcaster, but you enjoyed the Masterclass, which was that, with the series of videos. So it's got to be sustainable, right? If you're going to get sick of it the first time, obviously, podcasts don't work. What was the intent of the podcast? And you gave up after 10 episodes. So what the hell did
Correct.
you do? It was kind of a,
I mean,
you didn't give it a shot.
I've heard from expert podcast marketers that it doesn't make sense till you do 100.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't even know how to interview. I mean, so that's where I get realistic with myself. Say, I'm not going to interview 100 people. I mean, I don't know. It's just not that I don't want to commit to that energy. I just know I won't be happy about it. So it won't be something I enjoy. So that means it's going to be like a job. It's going to be painful. And so I can't express enough that you don't have to force yourself into a box. Like, there's ways you can be influencing people everywhere. It's just got to find what the way speaks to you. And then but then you got to commit to it. Like, no matter what. And that's the other thing, is people give up way too soon and they just say, this isn't working. And they don't do it. But I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but I have tons of examples of clients of mine and even myself where I just commit to something heavily and just let it, see it through to the end. And it does work. I mean, I can't tell you enough that Masterclass has brought me leads that I never would have got if I didn't have it. And I spent a lot of time on that thing, but it was easy time for me. It was just time. The time is what I struggled with, that because I have work to do, but doing it, I enjoy it. I could do that all day. I have a lot to say. Clearly, I keep over explaining things, but so that's why it was easy for me. And I have other things I want to do. It's going to be easy to do. It's just got to find the time, and then I'm going to do it.
Right.
And then eventually, over the future after that, I'll produce activities that, again, if I didn't do that, it came my way.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. I wish I had learned some of this stuff sooner. But speaking of shows, this is, I don't know the exact number, but we're approaching 250. This is our fifth year. We're doing about 50 a year. This is fifth year basically. So we started just before COVID. I think it was February, March of 2020. So
you're a natural. I mean, it's in your bones, right? This isn't work for you, is it? Just feels.
Now it's during COVID. At first we built the show to educate, but then it became education, but it also became networking. That was my networking thing. And a lot of people don't have, you may have to take you 2 hours or take a flight to see someone. And I'm not saying this takes the place of that, but I'm able to meet someone new just about every single week, talk with them, learn a new topic, share that with the world. We create a blog for every single one. So it's helpful. And now I guess my website is a search engine. You can just search a word and it'll pull up any single topic that was brought up. We have the transcripts on there. People find that useful. But what I hear all the time is, they go back to the site. They don't look past the last 10 shows. So we're bringing a lot of topics back up. Not that there's any change, but let's revisit marketing. Let's revisit, your FDD review or your accounting best practices and stuff like that. So not many changes. There's some updates as you just got back from the conference, maybe some new things you learned, which will add, but not a lot changes, at least when you're doing due diligence or looking at brands and stuff like that. So yeah, it's fun. And for me, it's natural. It's just part of what my weekly routine. It's just new show every week. Sometimes we batch record them, but it's fun. I truly enjoy it. I know some people don't. And they first told me I had to face radio and we just did audio, and then we added video, and I was like, I'm screwed now. And now I got to become a writer, and I am definitely not a good writer. So this is something that's easy for me. It's fun. And yeah, but for some people, I have friends of mine that were on the same kind of group, and they're writers. They're afraid of the camera. So they write, and that's equally as good, I think, if that's how you can connect with people.
You said it a minute ago that like the networking that came from this, that wasn't your primary focus on doing this. I guarantee when you started doing this, you're thinking that you're going to get lots of subscribers and followers and lots of people finding you that way. And that's how you're going to make this make sense. But I bet you the networking is what produced more value out of it. So that's where people give up on things too soon, because they don't realize big data. Take a step back and think about all the things that come from that. And then, they don't really put that together. It's understandably, because you really may not if you're not experienced with it. But I guarantee the networking you brought to the table was the differentiator here. I mean, when I was at this conference the other day, I mean, people walked up to me and said, Lonnie, you haven't been posting on LinkedIn. I just told you earlier, I don't like social media. So like when I got too busy over the last few months, believe me, I have tons of content to get out there. I just been too overwhelmed to actually get to it. But I realized, geez, you actually paid attention. People are paying attention to this stuff, So now I gotta get back to getting some stuff out there. But you don't realize how many people actually see this stuff and put a face to a name and recognize it. It's weird. So anyway,
That's celebrity status, I call it. What?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it was surprising for sure for me.
What was, if you could share the name of the conference, and if you can share any takeaways?
It was the Young Conference in Scottsdale this year. The Fishmans and Ryan Hicks put it on, and they also do Springboard, which is one of their other popular conferences that I also go to. And I think they have a third one called Unconference as well, which is more of a small group. And, they have lots of emerging and mid franchise brands there. And, it's good for someone like me to go there and shake hands and kiss babies, but then it's an educational platform. So they have people speaking and talking and educating things that I think brings a lot of value. But the most value comes out of just talking to people. I mean, I got, again, the same questions on my Masterclass got asked to me 35 times the last few days, and I feel like, I feel bad because I'm like, this is my Masterclass. It's not self-promotion, but I want them to know that I know they have more questions, and their marketing team, they're not going to remember my answer. Even when I told them at the, in person, they're going to go back and try to tell their marketing person, Lonnie said, go do this, and then they're going to butcher it. So I say, go to my Masterclass, get your marketing teams there. They can just get questions answered about website structure, about content, about GBP stuff, you name it. I covered the whole basis, even if it's just loosely related to SEO, it's on there because they're the questions I get asked. So I love sharing my knowledge, and I love helping people, especially emerging brands that don't have the big budgets. They still need to know this stuff. They still need to head in the right direction and make the right decisions that will get them results or save them a lot of money and time in doing the wrong things. So that's where I'm happy to have it out there. And I hope people like it and utilize it for those reasons.
I went through the class and it was very helpful. So I greatly appreciate it. So for anyone listening and that's interested, we'll put the link in the show notes. Switching gears a little bit, because, you work with franchisors as well as franchisees, and, every organization is different. Depending if the franchisor offers what they call turnkey marketing. Some are going to be a little bit less, and not because they don't want to assist their franchisees, but maybe it's more B2B and they have you going out and doing more of the networking in the chamber. But we see a lot in the home services space, which you have a lot of experience in, helping those brands. So the question that comes up is that there's a different strategy. At the franchisor level, there's typically a brand fund. You're getting kind of that national presence across the country. And then you have the franchisees located in their specific markets, maybe a couple zip codes or a handful of zip codes in their state. So the question is, the strategies are different, but at the same time, how do they work? How do you kind of work together so that you're not replicating posts and content and potentially, I would assume, maybe get penalized for that? So how does that strategy kind of differ when you're putting money into the brand fund, but you're also doing kind of marketing at the local level where, I mean, the information for the most part is similar because you're all dealing with the same brand.
Yeah, I mean, I run this a lot. I mean, every brand I work with has a different version of what you just said. I mean, it's amazing. Everybody has opinions,
Right.
other agencies have opinions from experience, some from lack of experience will recommend things. So there's all this noise of information and recommendations out there. So I understand why there's this big variety of what I inherit when I work with the brand, or even I just analyze brands a lot. I have, hey, Lonnie, can you look at my website and tell me what you think? And I'll get on calls with them. I'll give them my advice, and get off that call. But it's amazing the differences in what I see. And again, a lot of my recommendations are in my masterclass. I know that sounds like I'm promoting it, but these are all the kind of questions I get is generally what you just asked. And so I can't stress enough that I've covered all this stuff in there. And for people who are listening to this and that have their own concerns and questions to go, I get them asked. But anyway, so what I see commonly is the brand will take money out of the brand fund, use it for lots of things. But if they end up doing SEO or using some of it for SEO, there is a national SEO strategy, right? And so when Google is looking at a franchise brand's website, they don't sit there and go, oh, that's a franchise. It's not how they analyze things. They analyze things that it's just another website. And so when they see that website, they have the same expectations as they would see on your website or a franchisee's website if they have a different website. Is they want to see content about the subject matter that they're in. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in. There's an expectation that you're going to be talking about med spa information or roofing information or medical information about whatever you do or whatever you sell or whatever you offer. And you kind of want to be informative. You want to display the fact that you are an expert. So you have all this wealth of information that anybody in the general public can turn to learn something like it's a resource. So that's one thing at the national level your brand should be doing. Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them do it well, some of them don't, right? So there's just lots of variety of what that is. And I could talk about that for an hour all by itself. But when you're a franchisee, if your brand is doing it right, then you don't need to establish yourself as the expert in roofing. You don't establish yourself as the expert in facials or waxing or, men's health, whatever it may be. You just need to establish the fact that you are operating in your city. Okay. So when your franchise brand gives you a microsite of some sort, which is hopefully tied to the brand itself, now you're being evaluated because you're connected to that brand. You don't need to rewrite a blog about roofing. You don't need to rewrite a blog about medical stuff. You don't need to establish yourself as an expert in the niche or the industry you're in because that's already been done website brand level if the brand's doing it. So
Right.
You're really just trying to establish yourself with local relevance that you are in that geographic market. So that's where there's really not a lot you can do above and beyond what's usually recommended. Is if you have any ability to optimize your website yourself, or you can, your franchise brand works with an agency that can do it for you. What you're really doing is most brands, every website is exactly the same for the franchisees, a microsite. So you have a very similar structure, right? The only difference would be this one's going to talk about Scottsdale. This one's going to talk about Los Angeles. This one's going to talk about Denver. This one's talking about Miami. But usually the rest of the content about the industry they're in is the same. Now, when I take on a franchisee and we do local SEO for them, one of the first things we do is, in theory, we were getting, the brands we work with, I only work with them if I can actually optimize that page. Some brands don't allow that. They're like, no, this is a template. We're not touching it. Well,
Oh, really? Huh.
You're severely limiting my ability to improve that franchisee's market. But they're like, in their mind, it's scale and it's the management of hundreds of locations that will have different content, whatever it may be, reasons why they make that decision. I don't think they understand the impact it has by being able to optimize locally. So we'll go to that page and we'll really hone in and get hyper local and add a bunch more words about the points of interest in Scottsdale, talk about the things that only people in Scottsdale would recognize. And it's not even related to the industry you're in. But what I'm trying to establish in Google's mind is that we are operating there. And I know that sounds like it's an obvious thing. You said Scottsdale on your page already. What else do you need to do, Lonnie? There's 30 Springfields in the US.
Right.
There's 80 some odd Washingtons, right? I mean, or what related to Washington. So Google is a robot again. And yeah, you might give enough information that makes it obvious to you that you're operating in that city, but Google's robot wants to see more depth. I mean, there's Pasadena, Texas, there's Pasadena, California. And so if you don't really highlight more specific hyperlocal information that differentiates the two Pasadenas, and yeah, you can put California and Texas, and that seems like an obvious thing, but I'm telling you from experience, it takes more.
Right.
And the more depth we go with localizing that content, the more Google trusts which city you're in, and then we'll rank you higher because of that. So that's one of the things that we do for our clients. But if you're a franchisee and you can edit your own content, find a way to crowbar that in there, add your own influence. And so that's what you can do to the website. And then when it comes to your Google business profile, which is, more important in my opinion than the website itself.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where you want to do the same thing. You want to make it hyper local. You want to add photos in I was just at a franchisee's grand opening when I was in Scottsdale, actually. And this is another thing I didn't even put on LinkedIn, so I'm actually going to do that today. But it's cool to go see franchisees in person, right? You can boots on the ground, you can meet the people, you can, really put that perspective out there. So I really enjoyed myself out there. But I sat there and I told the owner, I said, okay, drive all around Scottsdale taking pictures of points of interest, the Scottsdale sign, the things that are recognizable, put your wrapped vehicle out in front of it and, make a comment about it. But what you're effectively doing in Google's eyes is you're confirming to them that you are operating there. That's your territory. That's your service area. It's not enough just to say Scottsdale on your website, Scottsdale inside your Google business profile. They want to see that depth. And that depth is often very hard for a brand or an agency to produce. So if I'm a franchisee and I'm trying to do the things that are going to bring the most value to me as a franchisee, again, hoping the brand is doing the right things, then when you come in and do the things I just mentioned, that's going to be a game changer for you. So that's what I would recommend. That's going to keep things, keep the conflicts down when it comes to, again, if you write about roofing, and your franchise, a lot of brands will give their franchisees local blogs, and I see them write about roofing, about med spa. All you do is hurt the brand because the brand already has content about that stuff. So when you write about it, Google looks at they're just 2 pages on the same website. And if they're they're talking about both about roofing or both about, I don't know, skincare, whatever it may be, then Google doesn't know which page should be the premier page. So it actually brings down the national page, which reduces the effectiveness of it because there's lack of traffic. Your page goes up a little bit, but your page will never go to number 1 locally.
Right.
So you have to be very selective with the content you generate at a franchisee level on the website to things that are just hyper local, that are unique to that location. If it can be answered on a national post that's generic, it doesn't mean you need a local version of that because people aren't going to Google and searching for how do I fix a roof leak? And then in Houston,
Right.
What's the difference between Houston or whatever, right? So like the people write, I see those blogs everywhere, and I'm like, you just wasted your money and energy, and you actually hurt the brand probably. Anyway, I can give you 10 examples of this where I went to the brand and go, look, I'm gonna go delete all this stuff. I don't care how much your franchisee spent on this. They're actually hurting us, the system as a whole. And that's a whole battle by itself. But anyway,
I can't even imagine. You got all these other business owners, and and they may not they're not doing it intentionally, right? They're doing
they have good intentions. It's a good thought process, but no one's telling them otherwise. Everybody's moving 100 miles an hour in the agency. But you got to put these in the brand policy. So I'll work with brands and say, hey, here are the rules that you need to put out there. I need to tell you why. And then they put them out there. Within the franchisees are like, oh, my nephew, who's an SEO guy, says I need a blog and do all these things. Like the intention's right, but that person doesn't have the experience to know what they're actually asking for and what the impact is negatively when you're working in a franchise system. So that's where it ends up becoming a battle, and it shouldn't, but it just does. And so brands want to be helpful. They want to be collaborative. So a lot of times they say yes, and then because they don't know either. And I come in and go, we're going to go delete all this. And they just look at me in horror. And I go, or we don't. Then I'm going to go work with somebody else because I'm not going to be able to do my job, So anyway.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I've heard horror stories, and yes, it's difficult, but you're the expert in that area, right? And now we know what to do kind of going forward. The plan is create content, but this is how you go about it. We kind of handle the rest.
Just be strategic for
It's
sure.
got to be very strategic. I absolutely agree. And I didn't really understand all the moving parts as well. So yes, it's not like you're selling it. The course is free, worth a watch, even if you watch a couple modules there, completely helpful. Can you share, maybe kind of putting it all together and to kind of round out the show, maybe a recent success story where you were able to, and we'll keep it in the franchise space, where you were able to help the franchisor, franchisee, or even both really turn things around specifically with SEO?
There's a lot of success stories. I mean, I think about there's the biggest one that pops in my head immediately. It's not the most recent. There's some recent ones, but it's all the same story.
Right.
A lot of times, a brand usually engages with me because they're not feeling like they're getting the results from whoever they're working with. That's
Right.
usually the case. And then somebody says, "Oh, you need to talk to Lonnie or whatever." And they go, "Okay, Lonnie, let's get on a call." And the first thing I do is I go look at their website, right? And I have tools that evaluate it and give me a sense of what they've done. I can see all the history. I mean, it's not 100% of it, but 80% I can see with these tools. And I go, okay, I piece together. I already know what they did. I know, or what they didn't do. And I can look at their website. I mean, that's the beauty of being an SEO is everything's right in front of you. There's no guessing game. And so I can see the depth of the quality of the content, how well it was optimized, all that. And I get on the call and I show them what their competitors are doing. I show them why the competitors are doing better. I give them lots of real world examples. I show them where their deficiencies are. And then they, again, a lot of other agencies do the same thing, and it's easy to poke holes in stuff and say things and whatever. So I would take that with a grain of salt if I was a brand, but I take it very seriously and think I give a lot of great advice and give a lot of direction. So I do that. And then they say, "Okay, Lonnie, I trust you for whatever reason. I like what you're hearing or recommend it. You're referred by the right people or you have a track record, whatever it may be." And they go, "Give it a shot." And then I would inherit the site and get all my access to it. And a lot of times I'm inheriting websites from very well-known marketing agencies. I mean, you name them, I know them. And I hate poking holes in their stuff because, we're still all marketers and we're all on the same team at some capacity. But I also see what they've done and the reason why there's no lack of results. So I have to poke holes so the brand knows that there's deficiencies here, right? So I take them over and work on the franchisee's location page. I do things like I mentioned earlier. I delete blogs. I do lots of things. I optimize the Google business profile and everything starts moving. And so I remember one brand specifically, which popped in my head. I went through the history, the research on them. They worked with probably the biggest marketing agency in the franchise space, which I'm not going to name names, but I'm sure you can. And they worked with them for 7 years, paying them, I can only imagine how much. And there was 50 plus franchisees in the system. And they probably grew like 1% a year, right? 2% a year. And this is just on the SEO side. And I look at it and the brand I was talking to said, "Oh, they just kept saying SEO takes time. SEO takes time." And I'm like, oh, I hate saying that myself.
The famous, it does take time, but there's just never
But 7 years,
Yeah.
7 years of it taking time. But I know it. They went to every month. They're like, "Look, there's a little bit of improvement, but it's just minuscule." And then I go look at the leads. So not only can see the rankings and the traffic and the clicks, but then what matters here is, are they making sales? They're generating leads. So I dive into that data and I was like, okay, you guys are generating about 500 leads a month, which is great. And they're in a round number. When you divide that by 50 Z's, that's 10 leads a month, which is still not bad. But 7 years, and I can only imagine how much money is being spent. What's the ROI on that? So long story short, we did a pilot with 5 Z's, and just those 5 they were generating 50, 60 leads a month. They not right away. They generate 20 or 30, and then it turns into 40, 50, and then 60. And at some point after around a year, they're generating about 100, somewhere around the range of 80 to 120 leads a month, depending on the territory and the Z and things like that.
What they were getting the year. Wow, that's impressive.
That was the end result. So when it's all said and done, those 5 pilots, started telling all the other Z's and all the other Z's, "I want to do this too." And, we did this big announcement. I explained to everybody what we do and how we're doing and those early results. And every single franchisee came to the table. And so we just applied it to everybody. And 18 months into the campaign, I did a town hall with the brand and went over the results just so everybody can see it. And I think we were generating 7,000 to 8,000 leads a month.
Wow.
And so that doesn't mean that's normal. Depends the difference. This brand was around for a while. They had a lot of good stuff going for them. When I told you earlier about franchisees doing good things in business and being talked about, like they checked all the other boxes. They just didn't have SEO dialed in right. Like I just went in there and turned some knobs, did some stuff that wasn't done, and it can really move that fast. So again, not a exact that kind of trajectory is very aggressive. So I don't want to set myself up for failure and say I can do that for everybody. But just
It's
telling you that existing brands do things with full intent, thinking they're doing well, but there's depending on the industry you're in, how competitive it is, there's a whole nother tier, a whole nother level of what you can do to be competitive and make the stuff move. And that's where I like to feel that I take that level of depth and determination when I develop a strategy that I guess a lot of other agencies just don't do, or they think they're doing it, but they don't know that there's a whole nother level you can go to. And that's unfortunate, but that's a big success story that I like to,
that's huge. No,
I think about.
that's huge because right, if maybe they're not up to speed on SEO, or they're not going about it the right way. And then, it's always, I hear, well, let's just dump money in paid ads. Let's just dump money here. And it's just, I call it almost like the black hole. You want, once you stop those ads, the leads stop coming in. So the SEO is something organic. Yes.
Oh,
Some time, but yeah.
let me speak to that. I mean, you just hit on a perfect thing and it's hard to explain is, and first of all, I can't even make a case study about this because I signed an NDA and the brand has a policy where they don't want to, so it's like, it kills me, because I wish I could just put this out there, but it did happen. But what's worse is then they sell to private equity and then private equity goes, oh, we have our own agency. So that own agency takes everything over. And so I just keep watching it and everything just keeps moving. And I see them add new franchisees, and guess what? Those new franchisees aren't moving,
Right.
and
Yeah.
all the existing, the 50 I worked with turned into 80 over that 18 months. They all have enjoyed all this and are just killing it. And then I can just imagine the conversations they're having in there going, why aren't the new ones moving
Yeah.
at that rate? But, so it just kills me when that type of scenario happens, but it's,
Sure,
still
that's
feels
common.
good when
Yeah.
it does happen for sure.
But no, that's really helpful, and that's one thing where my focus has been just really putting good content. I'm national, so there's a lot there. It's hard to really focus on one area, but yeah, no, learning every day and trying to apply as much as we can. I know we went a little bit over. Last question I like to ask everyone that comes on the show: fun fact. I don't know if you remember what you put down.
I
We'll see
don't.
if it's different. I sometimes I lost my spot over here. I'll ask the fun fact, and it's wait a second, we're going in a different direction. Something about Mexico.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what popped in my head. I was like, I lived in Mexico for 10 years. Still have a house down there. And, you look at me and I don't look like the stereotypical guy that would have lived in Mexico, but for a long time there, I was in Southern California and, got sick of just the grind of, making a living just to survive in a high dollar area like Orange County, as it's pretty expensive to live there. And I was like, you know what? I just need to take a vacation for a weekend and went to Mexico and rented like a condo there and was like, what am I doing? But I mean, contrary to, not many people would do that. And there's all these fears of Mexico, which I can, talk about another day. But, I bet one of the best decisions to make in my life and happy to do it. And then I liked it so much. I moved there permanently, or at least for 10 years and built an agency and hired a bunch of people there and trained them in SEO and everything. And a lot of them are still with me. I'm currently in Idaho, but I definitely have a big love for Mexico. I like my tacos. If you can't tell by looking at me, that's always a big thing that pulls me that direction constantly.
Well, part two of the fun fact: in 10 years, you didn't learn the language.
Not even once. That's the worst part. I mean, so I was surrounded by enablers. I mean, on one hand, my entire neighborhood is full of Americans. So everybody's there, the local bars around there, everybody speaks English. So that's the one thing. The second thing is when I hired the team, of course I had to hire people that spoke English. So we just speak English to me. And then my wife speaks Spanish and English. So we'd go out. If it came down to it, she would just interpret it
She was the
and
one,
made my
right?
life easier. My brain doesn't work that way though. I mean, I think that's the problem too, is I'm an analytical person, numbers guy, statistics guy. My brain is not for language. Like I can, even now, I barely pick up words, it's not my nature. So it made it easier for me when I had these enablers surrounding me. So that's,
Google Translate. My wife is from the Czech Republic, and when I visit her family, I don't know. I mean, I know maybe 5 words of Czech, and I mean, you just talk in this thing, and it talks the other. I mean, it completely translates everything, and it's so convenient. I don't know how the hell we did it prior to that. But yeah, it's technology.
Oh,
Technology is great as long as it's working. Technology is great, or you have internet.
well, that's where I'm hopeful AI is going to come in and they're going to have a solution where, like, in real time,
Yeah.
I know Google translates okay, like it can get you through things, but I know AI would make it a whole nother level, especially when they, Facebook has those glasses that they're putting out there. I know other people are going to do the same thing. Can you imagine it just listening to what someone's saying and then right on your glasses would tell you what they're saying in English? You can have a conversation. It's going to be that.
Amazing.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's probably already in that direction if I had to guess, but
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
I'm excited as well. Yeah, it will help. I mean, English is spoken in many countries we've traveled, and but it would be pretty amazing just to have that convenience. But Lonnie, this is fun, man. I'm sure we could have probably talked, and we started talking before. We've spoken again for hours.
Oh yeah.
I think this was fun, and we'll put all your contact information if anyone wants to reach out. But I'll put that link to that masterclass. I think that's huge. It's definitely helped me. I learned a lot, applied it all, and you got to be consistent. You almost need like this checklist, and you need going to eventually have an assistant or someone to really assist me with some of these tasks, because there is quite a bit that you can be doing. So, but ultimately it's got to be sustainable. And to your point,
Yeah.
if you just absolutely hate it, either it's got to be outsourced somehow, or you got to, I always say, pick your platform. If it's audio writing, as I was mentioning, or video, pick what you enjoy doing and it won't feel like work, or else it becomes a grind. But awesome. I appreciate it. And if anything we didn't talk about that you found helpful, or if you see another resource, if you shoot me an email, we'll include that on the show notes on the blog as well.
I'll definitely do that. And I really appreciate you having me again. We can do another 2 hours. We'd probably
Absolutely.
put people to sleep. As entertaining as we think we are. I mean,
Yeah, right. We'll do a master class in a different area, but no, it's
there you go. There you go.
it's a lot, and everyone's got I got the secret sauce, and is it really
Yeah.
that secret sauce? There's really, there's a guide, kind of, that's basically what you created in that master class. You don't need the next, what's the word I'm missing? Not the strategy, but like the hack, I guess, right? It's what's the new hack of the day that's not going to work. So, but no, this was helpful. And I think it's good to explain a little bit more, not just you need SEO, but what the hell is SEO to begin with? How do I actually implement it to start? And that's why we asked that question. If I have an hour a week or 5 hours a week, whatever that number is, how do I get started? So stuff like that. And then you slowly build. So just build some consistency and build it, kind of like you brush your teeth every day. You're doing a video every day. You're doing some type of article or blog every week. It takes a little bit of time and becomes a habit at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is fun. We'll definitely have you back on, and appreciate it. We'll definitely talk soon.
All right. Happy to be here and happy to do it again if you choose.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.